Howdy design fans, and welcome back. Everything we've spoken about up until now essentially comes down to influencing people's behavior. Regardless of what conversion action you're tracking, if it's a sale or it's a form. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is get a person to act or behave in a certain way on your website or landing pages. That's what this is all about. And because at a very fundamental level, forget about all the techniques for a second. Forget about all the best practices for a second. Forget about the buying funnel for a second. At its most base level, what we're talking about is influencing human behavior. So because of that, it's worthwhile spending a few minutes on discussing some of the core components that influence human behavior. And there's no behavioral formula that is more elegant, that is more simple as the fogg behavior model. So let's talk about the fogg behavior model for a minute. It was introduced by B.J. Fogg, who is a Stanford professor. He's an author, he's a behavioral scientist, and he also founded the Persuasive Technology Lab at Stanford University. So he knows what he's talking about. His behavioral model is accepted in the field as one of the most trusted and one of the most significant behavioral models. When I was taking my master's degree in industrial psychology, this was the primary behavior model that we focused on when learning about human motivation and human behavior. I want to do a quick exercise with you first to help illustrate exactly what the fogg behavioral model is, okay? Now, say you're home at night, right? You're on your couch, it's dark out, it's late, and your doorbell rings, okay? And you don't get up to answer the door. Why not? Come up with a reason. Write down a couple of reasons right now. Just pause, take out a piece of paper, keep them in your head, write down a few reasons why you might not have answered the door. I'll wait. Okay, hopefully you have a couple of reasons. Did you say something like, I'm scared of who it might be? I'm scared that it's a serial killer at my door. That's why I didn't go to answer the door. Okay, you might have said something like, I know it's my wife, and she always rings the doorbell even though she has keys just to see if I'm a dedicated husband, and I finally snapped and I'm not answering the door anymore. Nothing to do with me. That's awkward. But you might have said that you were in the shower. Or you might have said that your brother, who's morbidly obese, was sitting on you, and you just couldn't get up to answer the door, right? So these are all different reasons. So some of those reasons were lacking in motivation. The reason why you did not respond to the trigger, I'm going to start using these terms because these are all essential terms for the fogg behavior model. The reason why I didn't respond to that trigger of the doorbell ringing might have been because I lacked the motivation, right? I was scared of the serial killer at the door, or I wasn't going to go answer the door for my wife or for my husband. I lacked the motivation. You might have been in the shower, you might have been under a really heavy sibling, and you lack the ability, right? So in the fogg behavioral model, it's very simple and very elegant. B equals MAT at the same time, okay? Behavior can occur when three things converge in the person at the exact same time. M, you need motivation. You need to be motivated to act. If any one of these three elements are missing, there's no behavior. A, you need ability. You need to be able to actually carry out that behavior. T is trigger. Something has to spark or initiate that behavior. In our example, the doorbell was the trigger. And in order for me to get up and answer the door, I need to have the ability and I have to be motivated to actually go and do that behavior. Every behavior, every action a person takes could be stripped down to these three core components. If one of them are missing, that behavior will not occur. B.J. Fogg does a lot of research when it comes to design and how to design websites, how to design products, how to design a corporate structure with regards to this BMAT, behavior equals motivation, ability, and trigger, at the same moment. And we could take a look at what the fogg behavioral model looks like in the context of good design, right? So you have a vertical axis and a horizontal axis over here. Okay, so let's say on the horizontal axis we have motivation. So there's a scale, right? There's a continuum of motivation. It could be, a person could be very unmotivated, right? So I could be low in motivation, and I can go all the way to being high in motivation, right? On the horizontal axis, let's say we have ability, right? It could be very hard. The task could be very hard. The proposed behavior could be very hard. Or it could be very easy, right? That's the continuum for ability. And the fogg behavioral model is plotted like this. You have an action line that runs like so. And this is called an action line. Now, it's really straightforward. Your triggers are going to be successful over here, right? So triggers will work. And under the action line, your triggers are going to fail. And there will be no behavior. Triggers fail over here. And triggers work above the action line over here. Now, this is very important for web usability, right? So say we have a person who is, let's say, highly motivated, but it might be pretty difficult, right? So it's a hard task, but they're highly motivated. You could have a person who, over here, there's low level of motivation, but it's a very easy task to accomplish. Once again, the behavior will happen. The trigger is going to work. Whatever trigger you provide will work. Down here, you could have low motivation, and it's hard, right? So your trigger is going to fail. It could be easy, and the person's not motivated, and it will fail, right? So this is very, very important when it comes to understanding how people are moved to behave in general and how to design effectively around that. Let's talk about the different types of motivation, right? In the fogg behavior model, there are three primary types of motivation. You have sensation, anticipation, and social cohesion. Anticipation is basically the desire for pleasure and the avoidance of pain, right? Seeking pleasure, avoiding pain. Typically, research has shown that avoiding pain tends to be more of an effective motivational factor than seeking pleasure. Then you have anticipation, right? So I'm motivated to do something, I'm motivated to behave in a way that's going to produce some sort of desirable result. Not necessarily the seeking the pleasure, but just the sense of anticipation is a very, very strong motivational factor. And then you have social cohesion. People want to be part of a group. People want to do things that create a sense of group identity, right? A lot of social circles are built around things that we share in common, right? So people are motivated to act in a way that will create a sense of social cohesion. Those are the three primary types of things that will motivate people. Ability is much more straightforward, right? How do you increase ability? Well, you could train somebody, right? So if you train, let's say something is let's say you train somebody, right? So you train somebody, as you train them, the ability to accomplish a difficult task goes up. Now, that's problematic for web design because you're not going to train people to, no one's coming to your website and is interested in learning how to navigate your site, how the product details are so complicated, right? That's not going to happen. Or if you're asking them to do a task, if you're asking them to convert in a way, like we said, if you make my checkout process too difficult, there shouldn't have to be a user guide, right? People are not interested in being trained. So what does BJ Fogg always talk about when it comes to creating behaviors out of perceived difficult tasks, right? Your product might be complicated. You might want somebody to do something which they perceive in terms of their ability, is you make it simpler. As you increase simplicity, you increase ability, and you decrease perceived difficulty. Okay? That's huge. As you increase the simplicity of your conversion action, as you increase the simplicity of your landing pages, you decrease the perceived difficulty of the conversion action that you want your visitors to take. That's crucial when it comes to understanding good landing page design. Now let's talk about triggers for a second. What color do we have left? Let's do something. Let's take green. Okay, green. Let's talk about triggers. There's 3 different types of triggers, and this is really the most important concept we're going to talk about here, because your triggers are your calls to actions. It's the text inside your button, right? Please tell me that you don't have the word submit by any of your forms, right? Of course not. If you do, you're going to have to change that real quick. So you have triggers. There's 3 different main types of triggers. Okay? You have, and this is all, I'm not making this stuff up. This is all the fogg behavior model. You have 1. Facilitators. Okay, you have signals. And you have sparks. Okay, really the sparks should be above signals, but it's okay. Facilitators work well when the visitor is high in motivation, but low in PD, perceived difficulty, right? So a facilitator is for a user who's motivated. They want to engage with your product, but they think, it might be very expensive. I might not be able to buy it, or this sounds very complicated. You sell a service that sounds very difficult to really understand what it is you do. If I'm going to sign up with you as a personal injury lawyer, it looks like I might have to go through lots and lots of paperwork. I'm nervous about all the different phone calls I'm going to have to take. I'm nervous about having to driving to your office. So the facilitator calls to action on your site have to be making it look easy, right? It's really easy. Just fill out a form and we're going to take care of everything for you, right? You're not selling the product, because a facilitator trigger is where you have motivation, right? The user is motivated already. They want your service, but they just think it's very difficult, right? It's hard, right? It's a hard task, you know. So your calls to action and your supporting copy should talk about why this is simple, why it's really easy, why it's not as difficult as you think it's going to be, and then make the navigation, make the actual copy of your site, the actual structure of your site, also simple to navigate. We're going to skip signals for now because that's the 3rd one. And then you have sparks, right? So sparks is just the opposite. Sparks is where a person is low on motivation, right? But high on perceived difficulty or perceived ability, right? He thinks that this is an easy task. Easy task, no big deal. You want me to submit a form. You want me to sign up for my newsletter, great example. But I just not so motivated, right? So I come to your blog. I'm about to leave. I got a popover. Sign up for my newsletter. It's easy. All I got to do is put my email address in, but I honestly don't want to read or get emails from you. Okay, so low in motivation. So your calls to action should be increasing motivation and showing value in signing up for my newsletter. So sign up for my newsletter and you're going to receive 30% off your next purchase. Or share this page on social media and I'm going to email you a 70-page blueprint for how to create incredibly effective Facebook fan pages, right? So you're going to increase value and you're going to increase motivation. So that's what a spark trigger could do. The important thing is not to screw this up, right? Because when you try to motivate somebody who's already motivated, it's a turnoff. If you try to make a task look easy when the task is already easy, it's a turnoff. So for example, if you're going to sign up for my newsletter and the call to action would be, hey, sign up for my newsletter, it's really, really easy. All you got to do is put your email address. It's so simple. So that's like, yeah, I get it's simple. That's not my problem. My problem is I don't want to be on your email list, right? So you got to talk in a way that increases motivation and not talk in a way that increases the simplicity. And the flip side is true by the facilitator trigger. If your customers are highly motivated to buy what you have, but they feel that it's hard, this is a classic thing, right? Leasing a car. Your average customer who's going to lease a car is highly motivated, right? I just leased a car. I was highly motivated. It was an exciting process. I'm looking at all the different models I wanted to buy. I was checking out, different interiors, different color schemes, all those different things. The problem was that they were all a little freaking expensive, right? So the copy that was going to appeal to me was going to say, why, oh, you could afford it. We have this option. You can get it a little cheaper if you don't have the heated steering wheel, whatever it is, right? So I didn't need to be motivated. I needed more perceived ability to lease that car, right? Now you have the signals. Signals is just vanilla. Oftentimes, your conversion action is pretty straightforward, right? There's no major lack of motivation, and there's no particularly low level of perceived difficulty or high level of perceived difficulty. So in those instances, which is probably what's typical for simple conversion actions like viewing a key page or viewing the pricing page or signing up for a newsletter, for the right visitor, they'll be sufficiently motivated, and it's an easy task. So you just need a signal, like this is where you could do it. Here's a button, click this button. This is how you're going to be on our email list. This is how you're going to get these different benefits. It could be a pretty straightforward button. Or a pretty straightforward call to action. So you have facilitator, signals, and sparks. Those are the three main types of triggers that affect motivation, that affect perceived ability, perceived difficulty, right? Those are the core components of the fogg behavior model and how they relate to web design. So remember, every behavior, especially every behavior on your website and landing pages, needs these three components to happen. You need to have motivation, you need to have ability, perceived ability, and you need to have a trigger, right? So very straightforward. If there's no button, if there's no download now call to action, there's no way for them to download, right? That's the trigger. But then you need to have these other two concepts, these core components, the motivation and the ability. And the most important thing to really remember as you write and as we design, we're going to talk about the design of calls to action later on in the course. But the important thing to remember are the three different types of triggers, how you talk to your people, how you try to facilitate your people. Is it a facilitator trigger, a signal trigger, or a spark trigger? And that's going to help you get direction on how you should write the copy on your page and how you should design your calls to action. So the important thing is for you to be able to kind of get into the heads of your typical website visitor, the types of people coming to your site. Do you sell something which is a complicated B2B service? Do you sell even a complicated B2C service? Are your products simple products or complicated products? Are you unique and kind of well-known? Or do you sell something rare, a little bit more exquisite, a little bit more sophisticated that needs more explanation? What are the struggles of the people coming to your site? Are people just not motivated because they're not excited enough about what you sell? Or is what you sell expensive? Or the information is difficult to understand? So what are the things that your visitors struggle with? That's important to know because that's going to help you understand how to design your calls to action, and it will help you understand how to influence your visitors' behavior in a way that will ultimately increase the revenue from your landing pages and website. So the quick exercise for the end of this lecture on the fogg behavior model is to simply think about that, right? Write down on a piece of paper, what are people struggling with when they come to my website? Are they lacking motivation, or are they lacking perceived ability to convert, to understand what I sell, to interact with my brand? If so, or are they lacking in both? And if so, what can I do? How can I speak in a way that helps either influence motivation or influences ability and perceived ability, so my triggers will be effective to get my website visitors to convert? So I hope you thought this is as exciting as I think it is. I think it's a beautifully elegant and simple model for human behavior. I really enjoyed it. It's 100% pertinent and relevant to good and effective website design. And I will see you very soon in the next lecture. Don't forget to do your exercise.